Hey there, welcome back to another review, this time of the 1994 thriller Silent Fall. Now, Silent Fall is a film that I have been curious about for years because of the whole plot of the film deals with a autistic kid, and as a person who has who is autistic. I mean, I have a form of autism called Asperger's syndrome, which they don't really consider Asperger's syndrome in the autism spectrum anymore. But when I was diagnosed with it, it was a part of the autism spectrum, the autistic spectrum, so to speak, or however the hell you say that. Uh, I'm no psychologist. I don't know any of this stuff. So, but it's a film that I heard about. I think I saw a trailer for it, and I was like, huh. I like Richard Dreyfuss. I like Linda Hamilton. I like John Lithgow. Okay, this might not be that bad. And it's a little bit of a letdown because it's not really that great of a movie. It's not even a good movie, but it's okay. I would say it's a time waster for me. It's not a superior thriller like Peter Travers said it was. It just isn't. There's a lot of things that hold it back. For one, it's just really ridiculous at points, to the point it's just laughable, and I don't really understand why the writer Akiva Goldsman decided, oh, I'm gonna make it so this autistic kid is super strong and can rip doorknobs off and can imitate people like he's a alien or something that has a voice box that can perfectly imitate other people. I don't know why Akiva Goldsman decided that was a good idea, because it's not realistic at all. I know there's some autistic kids that might be have strengths to have bouts of strength, but I don't know if it's strong enough to rip doorknobs off the hinges, or and I've never heard of an autistic kid who can expertly mimic people's voices. And that's what happens in this film. This kid can mimic the people's voices perfectly. Not like just imitations, like, I can do every now and then. Like kind of like what I did when I was a kid. And I had these movie novelizations, these books based on movie screenplays, and I read them, and I try to do my best interpretation or my best impression of the actors. So, for example, like if I was reading Rocky, it'd be all like, "Hey, yo, Paulie, uh, I got a big fight coming up, and I thought you maybe get the meat out, so we can go punch some meat. Because I could really punch some meat right now, Paulie. That'd be really good. I really would like to punch some meat. But so you see stuff like that, or with Arnold Schwarzenegger, with you're fired, or I'm not the best Arnold. I don't do the best Arnold, but it's just stuff that I'm not really a professional at that, and I don't do it like so great that, oh my God, you can't tell the difference. And what also makes it ridiculous is that the kid is also, it's not just male voices, it's female voices, which is really completely unrealistic. Uh, he also does it in multiple different tones of voices and pitches, and it's just like, come on now, Akiva Goldsman, what the hell were you smoking? That's not how this works. But anyway, the film is directed by Bruce Beresford, who is a director who's done a good amount of films. I mean, he's well known for directing things like Breaker Morant, Tender Mercies, Crimes of the Heart, Driving Miss Daisy. I'm not really the biggest fan of that, but he directed Her Alibi with Tom Selleck, and yeah, he's a good director. I didn't the directing was not a pro. I didn't have a problem with the directing of this movie. That was one of the things about the film that I thought was actually really good was the directing. and I thought the editing was really solid as well, by Ian Crawford. The cinematography was there by Peter James. It did its job well, but the screenplay by Kiva Goldsman really has a lot of issues. But I did like the cast. Richard Dreyfuss plays Dr. Jake Rainier, who is a child psychologist who is hired to try to crack this kid's mind in order because he's the only, pretty much what happens. His parents get murdered, and he's the only one that knows who the killer is. And the kid is so traumatized, and he's got such a big case of autism, and he can't even really communicate very well. And so Richard Dreyfuss, he's the one that has to find a way to crack the code and find a way to get across to the kid and find a way to get a confession out of him. And you find out about there's a past with his character that's kind of dark, where one of the kids ended up killing themselves because he ended up having these autistic kids, stay at his home, and he'd treat them, and something happened, and a kid ended up dying, and he really held that with him for so many years and retired. And it wasn't until this case that he came out of retirement. And then you have his wife, who's played by Linda Hamilton, who's trying to tell him it's not your fault. She's basically there to be the rock for Richard Dreyfuss, and that's really about it. And then there are some moments too where they kind of bicker a little bit, but Linda Hamilton is pretty much wasted in this movie. She really does not have that much to do at all. So so you have Linda Hamilton plays Karen Elliott, who I guess maybe they were husband and wife, but not anymore, but I think they are. They are. It's just for some reason the the description of the cast does not show her having the same last name as Richard Dreyfuss's character. Then you got some rival doctor, played by John Lithgow, Dr. Renee Harlinger, who believes that Richard Dreyfuss's methods aren't going to work, and that this kid is he believes that the theory that the kid is the one that killed the parents, because when he was found, he had a knife and he was covered in blood, so they just automatically assume that the kid killed the parents. Like, really, it's not Chucky. I don't think he's strong enough to do that. But that's what they believe. And J.T. Walsh, who plays the sheriff in the small town where these murders have happened, plays a sheriff named Mitch Rivers. He sides with Dr. Renee for the most part. So that's where you have that little back and forth drama between, the Dr. Jake Rainier, the disgraced child psychiatrist, psychologist, who wants to find a way that doesn't involve drugs in order to get a confession out of this kid. Because that's the whole thing. John Lithgow believes, in a way, somewhat, that the kid might have done it, and he wants to get a confession out of him through drugs, but Richard Dreyfuss doesn't agree with that. And so you have that sort of that drama and that dynamic that goes on in the film. Basic gist of the plot is this: you have Tim Warden, who is played by Ben Faulkner, who honestly I thought the kid did a great job performance-wise, but it's just what he's asked to do, the imitation stuff, the mimicking, the ripping the doorknobs off, and it's just, come on now, that's fantasy. That's not even the psychological thriller territory. That's fantasy. So Tim Warden, he supposedly witnesses parents' double murder. Jake Rainier, Richard Dreyfuss, former child psychiatrist turned therapist, is called on to probe the child's mind in order to solve the case. And Richard Dreyfuss, he's one of the main reasons why I can watch this movie, is because he's so good. Richard Dreyfuss is a fantastic actor, and he does a great job in this film. It's a really good performance by him, and probably one of the more underrated performances I can think of when it comes to his career. So he's trying to solve the case, and this film has a psychological drama in it that's provided by the fact that not even Jake can entice Tim to communicate with what he has or has not seen regarding the crime. Tim's sister Sylvie, played by Liv Tyler in her acting debut, is protective of him, and she eventually warms to Jake's efforts, but is concerned when she learns that he was implicated in the suicide of another young child who was under his care. Jake then gradually befriends Tim. Jake thinks that Tim is trying to communicate by cutting up playing cards, but Sylvie reveals that Tim is good at mimicking voices. Jake is able to trigger Tim's memory so that Tim mimics the voices he heard on the night of the murder using the trigger phrase "God damn," which this is the fantasy element of the screenplay by Akiva Goldsman. Did he even bother to do any sort of research regarding autistic kids? Just because they're autistic doesn't mean they can do things that really no human being could possibly do. It's kind of insulting, to be honest. And so the kid perfectly mimics mom and dad's voices. Then he attempts to, and then Dr. Rainier attempts to piece together the chronology of the murder, suspecting that Tim interrupted a fight between his parents and an intruder. Sheriff Mitch Rivers, played by J.T. Walsh, threatens to use drugs to get Tim to talk about the murder, and Dr. Renee Harlander successfully hypnotizes Tim into breaking down a locked door. Which, that was just ridiculous. That's the stuff I'm talking about. Breaking down a locked door because he hypnotized him, and that he wasn't able to get out of the hypnosis. He was able to go in the trance really easily because he's autistic, and then he was just able to rip a door down. It's just like, he's not the Hulk. Come on. And so the police chief, J.T. Walsh, seeing this as a proof of Tim's strength, concludes that Tim was the murderer after finding photographs showing that Tim's father was molesting him. Yeah, we have to go there. And by the way, spoilers, if I haven't said that already. I mean, this is a movie from 1994 that barely nobody has heard of. I might be the only person who's doing a review of this movie. So, yeah. So, so that night, Sylvie, Liv Tyler, plans to take Tim away and attempts to convince Jake to run away with them. She fails and instead paralyzes Jake with some drug and then throws him into an icy lake to drown him. This is a sequence I thought was pretty tense and pretty suspenseful. There was a sequence earlier in the film too where Tim was on the roof of Richard Dreyfuss's house, and Richard Dreyfuss trying to get him off the roof. And because that's kind of how the other kid that was under his care committed suicide. He jumped off the roof. And so it was like a repeat of, oh no, not again, and Richard Dreyfuss is going to do the best he can to make sure it doesn't happen. And he does save the kid. Um, and so Richard Dreyfuss is paralyzed. He's thrown into the icy lake. The way that this sequence is shot is really well done. But he eventually gets out though. And Tim mimics the police chief's voice over the phone to lure Sylvie to the police station and pulls Jake out of the lake while she's away. And then Sylvie returns and Jake reveals that he has solved the mystery by examining Tim's cut-up playing cards. He then says, this is the big spoiler, this is the big twist in the plot, that it was actually Sylvie who killed her parents because her father had raped her repeatedly and was trying to do the same to Tim, and her mother was aware of the abuse and stayed silent the entire time, hence the title Silent Fall. And the film does take place during the fall as well. And then Sylvie tries to kill Jake again, but is stopped by Tim, who speaks with his own voice for the first time. The film then closes with Jake, his wife Karen, and Tim going out trick-or-treating on Halloween. Tim has gradually improved and can now speak in his own voice as well as smile. And Jake's conversation with his wife reveals that Sylvie will be moved to a hospital with minimum security in the near future. Majority of the movie was actually filmed on the eastern shore of Maryland, including Easton and St. Michael's. And the film came out and did nothing in the box office. It made about $3 million on a $30 million budget. And it was pretty much a box office bomb. I can see why it's a hard sell for one. Richard Dreyfuss at this point in time was not really a big star. Not anymore. He wasn't really headlining big movies. Linda Hamilton wasn't either. John Lithgow maybe, but he just has a supporting role here. Plus, it was never going to be the type of film that was going to be a huge hit. And when people saw the trailer, they probably saw the ridiculousness of the kid who has perfect mimic abilities and was like, this is just silly. And that's the thing, yeah, it was silly. It was too silly at points. That whole aspect completely prevented the film from being anything but just a decent time waster. That aspect of the film is the main problem that I have with the movie, and it's a seriously crippling flaw. Another thing is it's not very engaging, other than the sequences with between Richard Dreyfuss and the kid, and the sequence where Liv Tyler paralyzes him and drops him in an icy lake. And any scene with Richard Dreyfuss and the kid is good, but everything else is just kind of like, I don't really care. It's drama that's silly, like John Lithgow hypnotizing the kid, and he's breaking a door down. It was just this kind of stuff was just really hurt the film. It would have been better off if I honestly think it was written by a different writer. Kiva Goldsman is not really necessarily the best writer for this kind of thing. If I remember correctly, he helped write Batman and Robin and like Batman Forever. Like this is not a guy who you hire to write serious psychological thrillers and or mystery movies. And that's really one of the biggest film's downfall. Direction by Bruce Beresford is good. The performances, by the most part, by the cast are solid. Uh, like I said, the editing is good. The cinematography is fine. I thought the score by Stuart Copeland was actually pretty good, and it's a film that if you like Richard Dreyfuss and this concept interests you, the whole idea of the autistic kid who saw a murder and he can't communicate very well, then, I would recommend giving at least a watch sometime, but be forewarned, there's some really silly shit in it that really hurts the film. And that's the thing. I can't really recommend this movie because of that. It's just it's disappointing. It's frustrating. It's irritating. It's annoying. It really is to see this type of Hollywoodized version of autism. It just makes me wonder what the fuck Akiva Goldsman was smoking when he wrote the screenplay. And it's too bad. There's some good things here. There's a good story here. It's just ruined by some Mickey Mouse bullshit with the kid mimicking shit like he's some robot who can perfectly copy people's voices. Um, but yeah, that's just my thoughts on Silent Fall, and I really do not know what else to say about the film except if I was going to rate it out of 5 stars. Like I said, I just think it's okay. It's a time waster for me. That's why I give it 3 stars. It's not a total piece of shit. It's just that one serious flaw, and the fact that it just isn't engaging enough as a whole is what makes it just it's okay. It's a time waster. I'm glad I have it in the collection. I'm glad I saw it once. I don't think it's as bad as some people make it out to be, but I don't think it's a great movie either, or even let alone a good one. But yeah, that's just my personal opinion. Anyway, thank you for watching my review of Silent Fall, and I will see you guys later. See ya.